Chapter 9. The Midnight Duel. Harry had never believed he would meet a boy he hated more than Dudley. That was before he met Draco Malfoy. Still, first year, Gryffindors only had potions with the Slytherins, so they didn't have to put up with Malfoy much. Or at least they didn't until they spotted a notice pinned up in the Gryffindor's common room that made them all groan. Flying lessons would be starting on Thursday, and Gryffindors and Slytherin would be learning together. Typical, said Harry darkly. Just what I always wanted, to peg full of myself on the broomstick in front of Malfoy. He had been looking forward to learning to fly more than anything else. You don't know that you'll make a fool of yourself, said Ron reasonably. Anyway, I know Malfoy is always going on about how good he is at Quidditch, but I bet that's all talk. Malfoy certainly didn't talk about flying a lot. He complained loudly about first year never getting on the house coach team and told long boastful stories that always seemed to end with narrowly escaping muggles in helicopters. He wasn't the only one, though, the way Seamus Finnegan told it. He had spent most of his childhood zooming around the countryside on his broomstick. Even Ron would tell anyone who had listened about the time he had almost hit a hang glider on Charles' old roof. Everyone from Wizardian family talk about which constantly. Ron had already had a big argument with Dean Thomas, who shared their dormitory about sorcery. Ron wouldn't see what was exciting about a game with only a ball where no one was allowed to fly. Harry had caught Ron prodding Dean's poster on West Ham's sorcery team, trying to make it player move. Neville had never been a broomstick in his life because his grandmother had never let him near one. Privately, Harry felt he had had good reason because Neville managed to have an extraordinary numbers of accidents even with both feet on the ground. Hermione Granger was almost as nervous about flying as Neville was. This was something you couldn't learn by heart out of a book. Not that she hadn't tried. At breakfast on Thursday, she bored them all stupid with flying tips she had gotten out of the library book called Quidditch Through the Ages. Neville was hanging on her every word, desperate of anything that might help him hanging on his broomstick later. But everybody else was pleased when Hermione's lecture was interrupted by arrival of the mail. Harry didn't had a single letter since Hagrid's note. Something that Malfoy had been quick to notice, of course. Malfoy's eagle owl was always bringing him packages of sweets from home, which he opened gloatingly at Slytherin's table. A barren owl brought Neville a small package from his grandmother. He opened it excitedly and showed them a glass ball size of a large marble, which seemed to be full of white smoke. It's a remembrance, he explained. Gran knows I forgot things. This tell you if there is something you have forgotten to do. Look, you hold it tight like this, and if it turned red, oh, his face fell because the remember had suddenly glowed scattered. You have forgotten something. Neville was trying to remember what he had forgotten when Draco Malfoy was passing the Gryffindor's table. Snatched the remembrance out of his hand. Harry and Ron jumped to their feet. They were half hoping for a reason to fight Malfoy, but Professor McGonagall, who could spot trouble quicker than any teacher in the school, was there in a flash. What's going on? Malfoy's got my remember, Professor. Calling Malfoy quickly dropped the remember back on the table. Just looking, he said, and he sloped away with Crabbe and Goyle behind him. At 3:30 that afternoon, Harry, Ron, and the other Gryffindors hurried down the front step onto the ground of their first flying lesson. It was a clear, breezy day, and the grass rippled under their feet as they marched down his sloping lawns towards smooth, flat dawns on the opposite side of the ground to the forbidden forest, whose trees were swaying darkly in the distance. The Slytherins were already there, and so were 20 broomsticks lying in the neat line on the ground. Harry had heard Fred and George Weasley complain about the school's brooms, saying that some of them started to vibrate if you flew too high or always flew slightly to the left. Their teachers, Madam Hooch, arrived. She had short grey hair and yellow eyes like a hawk. Well, are you all waiting for? She barked. Everyone stand by a broomstick. Come on, hurry up. Harry glanced down at his broom. It was old and some of the twigs stuck out of at old angles. Stick out your right hand over your broom, called Madam Hooch at the front, and say up, up, everyone shouted. Harry Broom jumped into his hand at once, but it was one of the few that did. Hermione Granger had simply rolled over on the ground and Neville hadn't moved at all. Perhaps broom-like horses could tell when you were afraid. Oh, Harry! There was a quiver in Neville's voice that said only too clear that he wanted to keep his feet on the ground. Madam Hooch then showed them how to mount their broom without sliding off the end and walk up and down the rows, correcting their grip. Harry and Ron were delighted when he told Malfoy Harry had doing it wrong for years. Now, when I blow my whistle, you kick off from the ground hard, said Madam Hooch. Your broom steady, rise a few feet, and then come straight back down by leaning forward slightly. On my whistle. 3, 2. But Neville's nervous and jumpy and frightened of being left on the ground pushed off hard before the whistle that touched Madam Hooch's lips. Come back, boy, she shouted, but Neville was rising straight up like a croc shout out of a bottle. 12 feet, 20 feet. Harry saw his scared white face, looked down at the ground falling away, saw him gasp sideways off the broom and walk. A third and a nasty crack, and Neville lay face down on the grass in a heap. His broomstick was still rising higher and higher and started to drift lazily towards the forbidden forest and out of sight. Madam Hooch was bending over Neville, her face as white as his broken wrist. Harry heard her mutter, Come on, boy. It's all right. Up you get. She turned to the rest of the class. None of you is to move while I take this boy to the hospital wing. You leave those brooms where they are or you'll be out of the Hogwarts before you can say quit. Come on, dear. Neville, his face tears cluttering his wrist, doubled off with Madam Hooch, who had her arm around him. No sooner were they out of a store than Malfoy burst into laughter. Did you see his face, the great lump? The other Slytherin joined him. Shut up, Malfoy, snapped Parvati Patil. Oh, King up for Longbottom, said Pansy Parkinson, a hard-faced Slytherin girl. Never thought you had like a fat little crybaby's Parvati. Look, said Malfoy, darting forwards and snatching something out of the grass. It's that stupid thing Longbottom Gran sent him. The remembrall glittered in the sun as he held it up. Give that here, Malfoy said Harry quickly. Everyone stopped talking to watch. Malfoy smiled nastily. I think I'll leave it somewhere for Longbottom to find. How about up a tree? Give it here, Harry yelled, but Malfoy had leapt onto his broomstick and taken off. He hadn't lying, he could fly well. Hovering level with the topmost branches of an oak, he called, Come and get it, Potter. Harry grabbed his broom. No, shouted Hermione Granger. Madam Hooch told us not to move. You'll get us all into trouble. Harry ignored her. Blood was pounding in his ear. He mounted the broom and kicked hard against the ground and up. His sword ear rushed through his ears. and his robe whipped out behind him. And in the rush of fiery joy, he realized he had found something he could do with being taught. This was easy. This was wonderful. He pulled his broomstick up a little to take it even higher, and heard scream and gasp of girl back on the ground and admiring whoop from Ron. He turned his broomstick sharply to face Malfoy in midair. Malfoy looked stunned. "Give it here," Harry called, "or I'll knock you off that broom." "Oh, yeah," said Malfoy, trying to sneer but looking over it. Harry knew somehow what to do. He leaned forward and grasped the broom tightly in both hands, and it shot towards Malfoy like a javelin. Malfoy only just got out of the way in time. Harry made a sharp about face and held a broom steady. A few people below were clapping. "No Crab and Goyle up here to save your neck, Malfoy," Harry called. The same thought seemed to have struck Malfoy. "Catch it if you can then," he shouted, and he threw the glass ball high into the air and streaked back towards the ground. Harry saw, as though in slow motion, the ball rise up in the air and then started to fall. He leaned forward and pointed his broom handle down. Next second, he was gathering speed in a steep drive, racing the ball wide, whistled in his ear, mingled with the scream of people watching. He scratched out his hand a foot from the ground and he caught it just in time to pull his broom stand, and he toppled gently onto the grass with the remembered clutch safely in his first. Harry Potter. His heart snapped faster than he had just dived. Professor McGonagall was running towards them. He got this feet trembling. Never in all my time at Hogwarts. Professor McGonagall was almost speechless with shock, and her glasses flashed furious. "How dare you! Might have broken your neck. It wasn't his fault, Professor. Be quiet, Miss Patil." "But Malfoy." "That's enough, Mr. Weasley. But follow me now." Harry caught sight of Malfoy, Crabbe and Goyle's trim fat face as he left, walking numbly in Professor McGonagall's wake as she strode towards the castle. He was going to be expelled, he just knew it. He wanted to say something to defend himself, but there seemed to be something wrong with his voice. Professor McGonagall was sweeping along with even looking at him. He had to jog or keep up. Now he had done it. He hadn't even lasted 2 weeks. He had be packing his bags in 10 minutes. What would the Dursley say when he turned up on the room's doorstep? The front step, up the marble staircase, inside, and still Professor McGonagall didn't say a word to him. She wrenched open doors and marched along corridors with Harry trotting miserable behind her. Maybe she was taking him to Dumbledore. He thought of Hagrid, expelled but allowed to stay on as a gamekeeper. Perhaps he could be Hagrid's assistant. His stomach twisted as imagined it watching Ron and the others becoming wizards. While he stumped around the town crying Hagrid's back, Officer McGonagall stopped outside the classroom. She opened the door and took her inside. "Excuse me, Professor Filquick, could I borrow wood for a moment?" Wood, thought Harry, bewildered as would a can she was going to use on him. But would turn out to be a person, a burly 50-year boy who came out of Flitwick class looking confused. "Follow me, you two." Professor McGonagall and they marched on up the corridor, Wood looking curiously at Harry. "In here." Professor McGonagall pointed them into a classroom that was empty except for Peeves, who was busy writing rude words on the blackboard. "Out, Peeves," she barked. Peeves threw the chalk into a dustbin, changed loudly. He swooped out, cursing. Professor McGonagall slammed the door behind him and turned to face the boy. "Potter, this is Oliver Wood. Wood, I have found you a secret." Wood's expression changed from the puzzlement to delight. Are you serious, Professor? Absolutely, said Professor McGonagall crisply. The boy is unnatural. I have never seen anything like it. Was that your first time on broomstick pottery? Harry nodded silently. He didn't have a clue that was going on, but it seemed to be expelled, and some of the feelings started coming back to his leg. He caught that things in his hand after a 50-foot drive. Professor McGonagall told Wood didn't even scratch himself. Charlie Weasley couldn't have done it. Wood was now looking at though all his dream had come true at once. Ever since the game of Bridge Potter, he asked excitedly. Who's captain of the Gryffindor's team? Professor McGonagall explained. He's just a build for a secret too, said Wood, now walking around Harry and staring at him. Light speedy will have to get him decent broom, Professor. A Nimbus 2000 or a clean sweep 7, I had say. I shall speak to Professor Dumbledore and see if we can bend the first year rule. Heaven knows. We need a better team than last year, flattened in the last match by Slytherins. I couldn't look Severus Snape in the face of for weeks. Professor McGonagall peered strangely over her glasses at Harry. I want to hear your training hard, Potter, or I may change my mind about punishing you. Then he suddenly smiled. Your father would have been proud, she said. He was an excellent Quidditch player himself. You are joking. It was dinner time. Harry had just finished telling Ron what had happened when he had left the ground with Professor McGonagall. Ron had a piece of stick and kidney pie halfway to his mouth, but he had forgotten all about it. Sickly, he said. But first year never, you must be the youngest house player in the about a century, said Harry, swallowing pie into his mouth. He felt particularly hungry after the excitement of afternoon, Wood told me. Ron was so amazed, so impressed, he just sat and gaped at Harry. I started training next week, said Harry. Only don't tell anyone who would want to keep a secret. Fred and George Weasley now came into the hall, spotted Harry and hurried over. Well done, said George in a low voice. Who told us we are on the team too? Peters. I tell you we are going to win that Quidditch Cup for sure this year, said Fred. We haven't won since Charlie left, but this year teams is going to be brilliant. You must be good, Harry. Wood was almost skipping when he told us. Anyway, we have to go. We got a deep down secret passway out of the school. But it's that one behind the statue of Gregory the Snamry that we found in our first week CU. Fred and George had hardly disappeared when someone far less welcome turned up, Malfoy flagged by Grab and Goyle. Having a last meal, Potter? Are you getting the train back to the Muggles? You are a lot braver now than you are back on the ground and you have got our little friend with you, said Harry coldly. There was of course nothing at all little about Crabbe and Goyle. As the high table was full of teachers, neither of them could do more than crack their knuckles and scowl. I'd take you on any time on my own, said Malfoy. Tonight if you want Wizard's Duel. Wants only no contact. What's the matter? Never heard of Wizard's Duel before, I suppose? Of course he has, said Ron, wheeling around. I'm his second, who's yours? Malfoy looked at Grab and Goyle, seizing them. Grab, he said, midnight all right. We'll meet you in the trophy room. And that's always locked. When Malfoy had gone, Ron and Harry looked at each other. What is a wizard's duel? Said Harry, and what do you mean you are my second? Well, a second's there take over if you die, said Ron casually. Things started at last on his cold pie. Catching the look on Harry's face, he added quickly, people only die in a proper duels, you know, with real wizards. The most you and Malfoy will be able to do is send sparks at each other. Neither of you know enough magic to do any real damage. I bet he expects you to refuse anyway. And what if I wave my wand and nothing happened? Throw it away and punch him on the nose, Ron suggested. Excuse me, they both looked up. It was Hermione Granger. Can't a person eat in a piece in this place? Said Ron. Hermione ignored him and spoke to Harry. I couldn't help overhearing what you and Malfoy were saying. Bet you could. Ron muttered. And you mustn't go wandering around the school at night. Think of the point you'll lose Gryffindor if you are caught, and you are bound to be. It's really very selfish of you, and it's really none of your business, said Harry. Goodbye, said Ron. All the same, it wasn't what you had called the perfect end the day, Harry thought, as he lay awake much later listening to Dean and Seamus falling asleep. Duel was back from the hospital wing. Ron had spent all evening giving him advice such as if he tries to curse you, you had better dog it because I can't remember how to block them. There was a very good chance they were going to get caught by Flitch or Miss Norris, and Harry felt he was pushing his luck breaking another school rule today. On the other hand, Malfoy's sneering face kept looming up out of the darkness. This was his big chance to beat Malfoy face to face. He couldn't miss it. Half past 11, Ron muttered at last. We had better go. They pulled on their bathrobes, picked up their wands, and tripped across the tower room, down the spiral staircase, and into the Gryffindor's common room. A few marbles were still glowing in the fireplace, turning all the armchair into hard, blank shadow. They had almost reached the portrait hole when a voice spoke from the chair nearest them. I can't believe you are going to do this, Harry. A lamp flickered on. It was Hermione Granger wearing a pink bathrobe and a frown. You, said Ron furiously. Go back to bed. I almost told your brother, Hermione snapped Percy. He's a perfect. He had put a stop to this. Harry couldn't believe anyone could be so interfering. Come on, he said to Ron. He pushed open the portrait of the fat lady and climbed through the hole. Hermione wasn't going to give up that easily. She followed Ron through the portrait hole, hissing at them like an angry goose. Don't you care about Gryffindor? Do you only care about yourself? I don't want Slytherin to win the house cup. And you lose all the points I got from Professor McGonagall for knowing about switch spells. Go away. Alright, but I warn you. You just remember what I said when you're on the train home tomorrow, you so. But what they didn't find out. Hermione had turned to the portrait of the flat lady to get back inside and found herself facing an empty painting. The fat lady had gone on a nighttime visit, and Hermione was locked out of Gryffindor's tower. Now what I'm gonna do? She asked shrilly. What's your problem? Said Ron. We have got to go. We three are going to be late. They hadn't even reached the end of the corridor when Hermione caught up with them. I'm coming with you, she said. You are not. Do you think I'm going to stand out here and wait for Flitch to catch me? If he finds all three of us, I'll tell him the truth that I was trying to stop you and you can back me up. You have got some nerve, said Ron loudly. Shut up, both of you, said Harry sharply. I heard something. It was a sort of snuffing. Miss Norris, Britain Ron, squinting through the dark. It wasn't Miss Norris, it was Neville. He was curled up on the floor, fast asleep, but Jock suddenly awake as they crept near. Thank goodness you found me. I have been out there for hours. I couldn't remember the new password to get into the bed. Keep your voice down, Neville. The password picks not. But it won't help you now. The fat lady's gone off somewhere. How's your arm? Said Harry. Fine, said Neville, showing them Madame Pomfrey mended it in about a minute. Good. Well, look, Neville, we have got to do somewhere. We'll see you later. Don't leave me, said Neville, scrambling to his feet. I don't want you to stay here alone. The bloody Baron been passed twice already. Ron looked at his watch and then glared furiously at Hermione and Neville. If either you of get a spot, I'll never rest until I have learned that curse of Bogey Squirrels told us about and use it on you. Hermione opened her mouth, perhaps to tell Ron exactly how to use the curse of the bogies, but Harry hissed at her to be quiet and beckoned them all forward. They flitted along the corridor striped with bars of moonlight from the high window, and every turn Harry expected to run into Fletch or Miss Norris, but they were lucky. They sped up the staircase to the third floor and tripped towards the trophy room. Malfoy and Traby weren't there yet. The crystal trophy case glimmered where the moonlight caught them. Cups, shells, plates, and statues, with silver and gold in the darkness. They edged along the wall, keeping their eyes on the doors at either end of the room. Harry took out his wand in case Malfoy kept in and started at once the minute crept by. He's late. Maybe he's kicking out, Ron whispered. Then a noise in the next room made them jump. Harry had only just raised his wand when they heard someone speak, and it wasn't Malfoy. Sniff around, my sweet. They might be lurking in a corner. It was Fleet speaking to Miss Norris. Norris stuck. Harry waved madly at the other three to follow him as quickly as possible. They squared silently towards the door away from the Fleet's voice. Neville's robes and barely whipped around the corner when they heard Fletch enter the trophy room. They are in here somewhere, they heard him muttered, probably hiding. This way, Harry mounted to the young other, and petrified, they began to creep down a long gallery full of suits of armor. They could hear Fletch getting nearer. Neville suddenly let out frightened squeak and broken into a run. He tripped, grabbed Ron around his waist, and the pair of them toppled right into a suit of armor. Clanging and crashing were enough to wake the royal castle. Run! Harry yelled, and four of them were them sprinted down the gallery, not looking back to see whether Flint was following. They swung around the door post and looked down on the corridor, then another. Harry in the lead without any idea where they were or where they were going. They ripped through a tapestry and found themselves in a hidden passageway, hurtled along it, and came out near their charm classroom, which they knew was a mile from the trophy room. I think we have lost him. Harry patted, leaning against the cold wall and wiping his forehead. Neville was bent double, whizzing and spluttering. I told you. Hermione gasped, clutching at the switch in her chest. I told you. I have got to get back to Gryffindor's tower, said Ron quickly as possible. Malfoy tricked you, Hermione said to Harry. You realize that, don't you? He was never going to meet you. Fletch knew someone was going to be in the trophy room. Malfoy must have tripped him off. Harry thought she was probably right, but he wasn't going to tell her that let's go. It wasn't going to be that simple. They hadn't gone more than a dozen passes when a door knocked, rattled, and sometime came shooting out of the classroom in front of them. It was Pius. He caught sight of them and gave a squeakle glide. Shut up, Pius. Please, you'll get us thrown out. Pius cackled. Wandering around at midnight, eagle fry streets. Naughty, naughty, you'll get caughty. Not if you don't give us away. Pius, please. Should we tell Fletch? I should, said Pius in a silent voice, but his eyes glittered weakly. It's for your own good, you know. Get out of the way, snapped Ron, taking a swipe at Pius. This was a big mistake. Student out of bed, Pius bellowed. Student out of bed, down the charm corridor. Ducking under Pius, they ran for their lives. Right to the end of corridor where they slammed onto the door, and it was locked. This is it. Ron moaned and they pushed helpless that at door. We are done for. This is the end. Could hear footsteps. Fletch running as fast as he could forward. Pew shouts, "Oh, move over!" Hermione sneered. She grabbed Harry's wand, tapped the lock, and whispered, "Almora." The lock clicked and the door swung open. They piled through it, shut it quickly, and pressed their ears against the listening. Which way did they go? Pews. Fletch was saying, "Quick, tell them, say please." "Don't mess with me." Pews, now where did you go? "Shan't say anything if you don't say please," said Pews in his annoying singing voice. "All right, please, nothing. Ha ha ha. Told you I wouldn't say nothing if you didn't say please. Ha 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 ha." And they heard the sound of Pews whooshing away and Fletch cursing in rage. "He thinks this door is locked," Harry whispered. "I think we'll be okay. Get off, devil." For Neville had been tugging on his sleeves of Harry's bathrobe for the last minute. "What?" Harry turned around and saw quite clear what for a moment he was sure he had walked into high armor. His was much on the top of everything that had happened so far. They weren't in a room as he had supposed. They were in a corridor, the forbidden corridor on the third floor, and now they knew why it was forbidden. They were looking straight into the eyes of monstrous dog, a dog that filled the whole space between ceiling and floor. It had three heads, three pair of rolling mad eyes, three noses twitched and quivered in their direction, three rolling mouths, saliva hanging in slippery ropes for yellowish fang. It was standing quite still, all six eyes staring at them, and Harry knew that the only reason they weren't already dead was that their sudden appearance had taken it with surprise. It was quietly getting over that. There was no mistaking that those thunderous blows meant Harry groped for a doorknob between Fletch and death. He had taken Fletch. They fell backward. Harry slammed the door shut, and they ran. They almost flew back down the corridor. Fletch must have hurried off to look for them somewhere else because they didn't see him anywhere. But they hardly cared. All they wanted to do was put as much space as possible between them and the monster. They didn't stop running until they reached the portrait of the lady fat on the seventh floor. "Where on the earth have you all been?" she asked, looking for their bathrobes hanging off their shoulders and their flusty face. "Never mind that pig snot, panty Harry," and the portrait swung forward. They scrambled into the common room and collapsed dreamingly into armchairs. It was a while before any of them said anything. Neville indeed looked as if he had never speak again. "What do you think they were doing keeping a thing like that locked up in a school?" said Ron finally. "If any dog need exercise, that one does." Hermione had got both her breath and her bad temper back again. "You don't use your eyes, any of you, do you?" she snapped. "Didn't you see what it was standing on the floor?" Harry suggested. "I wasn't looking at his feet, I was too busy with his head." "No, not the floor. It was standing on the trapdoor. It's obviously guarding something." She stood up, glaring at them. "I hope you are pleased with yourself. Could all have been killed or worse expired. Now, if you don't mind, I'm going to bed." Ron stared at her, his mouth open. "No, we don't mind," he said. "You don't think we'd drag her along, wouldn't you?" But Hermione had given Harry something else to think about as he climbed back into bed. The dog was guarding something. What had Hagrid said? Wignots was the safest place in the world for something you wanted to hide, except perhaps Hogwarts. It looked as though Harry had found out where the grubby little package from the World 700 had 13 was. That's it for today. Thank you so much. Stay tuned for next chapter. See ya. Bye bye.